So the big news on the tiny barn conversion is that we had a builder control chap, Gareth, come round, and he's given us the kiss of doom, which is that we're going to have to underpin a few of the walls in the tiny barn. It's something that I was sort of expecting. As soon as I took up the slab, you can see around not only how wet it is, but how clayey it is, and how there are very few, if any, foundations, particularly on this side. So the underpinning itself, I've never done it, but I've done some learning. I've asked a few friends as well what the best way of doing it, and obviously I had some advice from Builder Control. I'm going to have to dig in and dig underneath these walls in 1 meter sections, and then put some shuttering over the front. So put some wooden boards which I've built, and then I'm going to have to fill that with concrete and do that in 1 meter segments as I go. So it's going to be slow, it's going to be laborious, but it'll mean that we'll rest easy knowing that there are strong foundations underneath each one of the walls. It's not the news we wanted, but it was sort of going to happen.
The first thing I need to do is create this form or shuttering for each 1 meter section. I made this out of some scaffolding boards that I'd cut down. I attached 2 horizontal lengths of scaffolding board together with 2 vertical pieces of wood. This ended up looking like this. Next, I attached some heavy duty tent pegs to the base of the shuttering using some fixing plates. This was perhaps overkill, but worked like a treat and ensured the bottom of the shuttering wouldn't move once pegged in. I then used my vise to bend the fixing plate over the tent peg 3 times.
So here's the shuttering I've built for the underpinning. So on the back side here, we've got these tent pegs that I'm going to drive into the ground to stop the bottom from moving. And then the other side, I've just got these just to keep the wall of concrete in. I can add to these as well, and obviously screw on some wider bits of wood to ensure that the concrete doesn't sleep out either side. I've also, because I've made it out of a couple of sleepers, I'm able to take this top one off, fill the bottom, and then put this one back on and then fill it up to the top. I'll do a video on exactly how I'm going to do that and how I think it's going to work. And then these bits here are just so I can put some wood up against that to brace it, and when I actually pour the concrete in. So obviously there's going to be a lot of weight pushing that back, so I need something just to keep that in whilst it goes off. So I'm going to start the underpinning in this corner underneath the partition wall. What I've done is I've got the laser level around to the finished concrete layer, and then I'm going to have to excavate this section here. So I've got marked 1 meter wide, and then I'm going to excavate back, put the shuttering up in place, fill that with concrete, let it go off, and then go to the next meter and then carry on around. I'm hoping to do 2 shutterings, 2 underpinning sections at a time. So I'll do 1 here and then 1 on the other wall, and that'll halve the time it takes me to do the underpinning. So first things first, I'll start to excavate some of that, and then I'll offer up the shuttering and then see how much more I need to dig, and then we'll go from there. Clearly doing something like this doesn't come without risk, and as soon as I start to dig in there may be some movement. So I need to have my wits about me and keep my eyes peeled if there are any cracks above, and get ready to jump away if the wall decides to slump down. So I've been digging now for about half an hour. I've done 2.5 barrow loads, which obviously means I'm going to have at least 2.5 barrow loads to bring back of concrete to fill the hole. A couple of things I've noticed is I was worried about how deep do I need to go. Well, I've hit this clay layer and I've got plenty of experience now digging out clay. This is solid, properly solid base for me to put the concrete on. Second thing is these blocks here were sort of protruding. Initially, I thought I'd put the concrete in and then chop them off. But actually, when I offer up the form. It's actually, because these two have fallen out, what I could do with is getting nice and close to that wall. So I'm going to chop these blocks off now, and then I think I'm about ready to start filling with the concrete. So I've excavated it all out. I've measured it up with the form just to ensure it's wide enough there. I'm going to have to add some more timber on the top here, but I'll do that once I've got the first bits in. I'm actually going to take this top section off to allow filling the bottom to be a lot easier. The other thing I'm going to do is I've got some rebar here, and I'm just going to drive it into this little hole inside the wall. I was going to drill in, but it's an old stone wall, there's often lots of holes. So I'm just going to drive that in with a mallet, and then drive another bit of rebar into the next section of mud, and then join them up so we've got a continuous line of rebar along the whole of the underpinning. So I've got my first bit of rebar here, which I've just driven into the wall. So my second piece of rebar here, what I've done is calculated that I can drive it into the mud over there, but also be able to just attach it there. So then wrap some wire around it, and then it's one continuous line. The other thing I've got at this end is a bit of membrane here, and I learned this from another YouTuber who was doing some underpinning, and basically the idea is that the membrane, when put in like this, the concrete goes on it, and then when we go to the next section, it just means that the mud doesn't stick to the concrete, and it makes the next section a little bit easier. So I made a little hole in the membrane, and I'm gonna cinch that up to that side, and then drive that in. Should be enough, a little tap. And it's just a case of connecting those two together to create that constant rebar line around the whole of the underpinning. So I've wired together the two rebar, and then what I'm going to do is I've positioned the shuttering in the correct position, and all I'm going to do is put these the tent pegs in, drive them in. Okay, that's the bottom secure. Then I can figure out whether or not it's level, so that's about level there. Obviously I'm going to be filling the bottom section first, so I'm going to take off this top one that's just held in by a couple of screws, and then I can begin filling the bottom. So I decided to invest in a concrete mixer. Picked this up, Facebook Marketplace, 180 quid, and hopefully it'll see me through a few projects. So I'm going to make up my mix for the underpinning. I've got some ballast, I've got some cement, I've got my mixer, got some water ready to go. So I'm going to do a 5 ballast to 1 cement, mix it up, put the first one in, and then we'll go from there. So I got my first mix done. Mixer's still going. It's a really quite a wet mix. I'm going to try and angle it into the tub here, fingers crossed it doesn't go everywhere.
I used a block of wood to push the concrete down, ensuring it was filling every inch of the space. Once I'd filled to the top of the first piece of scaffolding board, I then screwed on the second board and began filling again.
So the hole is taking a lot more concrete than I'd hoped. So I've made this little caddy thing. I have a couple of bits of scrap wood just to feed the concrete down. So I'm going to see how that fares up now. I finished the first bit of underpinning just over there in the corner. Pretty happy with how it all looks. Lots of learning happened. But tomorrow I'll take that down and see how it really went. So now on to number 2 bit of the underpinning, and this is a very different beast. So this is the original wall, and as you can see, there's no foundations. So my job is to underpin it, so to dig underneath. Some big rocks there, so I'm a little bit nervous about rocks dropping, but we'll see how we go. I'm going to just do it in 1 meter sections. As before, I'm going to start in this corner. As you can see, I've got my line there. You can just about make out the laser level. Just there. So my line runs all the way along this wall to there. You see my little laser. This one is going to be ever so slightly different because, as you can see, I've included a gap there. It's roughly 100 mil all the way along. And so I'm going to go underneath and it's going to sit proud on top here. So I've got at least, obviously this wall isn't straight, but I know I've got at least 100 mil all the way along that I'm going to fill up to at the same level. So I'm going to offer my shutter, so identical to the shuttering over there, up, and just to see how much I need to excavate, just make a little mark on the wall. So that's just over 1 meter there, so that's the end of the shuttering. So if I just cut out to the inside of this piece of wood, then that should be enough to start underpinning this first corner. Already I've noticed that these bits that I put on earlier on, they're going to cause problems. So I'm going to cut this off about there, this bit here, just so it can get underneath the wall. I'm going to dig in 6 to 8 inches underneath because obviously the concrete's going to come out to this level, so it should be enough to just support this side of the wall. So going to start digging. I've been digging now for about 40 minutes, which is longer than I'd expected. But I've hit this clay again, which I'm actually confident that once we hit the clay, then that's a firm enough base really to put the concrete on. It's super solid. I've been marrying up the form at regular intervals. Basically, I don't want to dig out too much. I don't want to dig too low. So the next thing I'm going to do is get my rebar in, the same as I did in the other corner. I'm going to hammer a bit into this side, hammer a bit into that side, and then I'll be able to join them in the middle, and then we can pour the concrete in. So I'm just about to start mixing up concrete to put into the underpinning. You'll notice I've got lots of different pieces of wood. On my last underpinning over there, this is my form, but what inevitably happens, because nothing's uniform in this building, bits of concrete start to seep out. So I've got lots of different sizes and shapes of wood. I've also got my drill and some screws. So should I need to modify the form, then it's very easy to do. So I've got my piece of rebar here, and I'm gonna drive it into that clay as far as I can, and then do the same inside, link them up, and then I've got my continuous ring of rebar around the underpinnings.
Once the rebar was in position, I then secured them together with 2 pieces of wire. Then I began the next mix and started filling the hole.
So on the first bit of underpinning I did over in the corner, if you remember, I had 2 full scaffolding planks. The idea being was that I filled the bottom section, makes it a lot easier to fill the bottom section, and then fill the top section so I can add on. So one little modification I made for this round is that I've split the top scaffolding plank into 2, and that means I can do the same. So I can just plonk this on the top, and then screw that one on, then fill up to this level. Once I've filled up to that level, I screw the last plank on so I can get the full height, but it just makes it easier shoveling the concrete in. So as I'm building up the level in the underpinning, I'm just giving it a couple of taps down at the bottom with a lump hammer. And it's just sinking the concrete a little bit lower, making sure there aren't any massive air bubbles in there. And in fact, the sign that it is full is when you hit it and the concrete sort of comes up, which means that there's no more air in there, there's no more room for the concrete to go, and that should be full solid. So the second underpinning form is now complete. I filled it right up to the top. Yet again, it's taken a lot more time and also a lot more concrete, but yeah, I'm happy with it, and I'm going to leave it for 48 hours, come back, and let's see how the job has really gone. So I've left this first bit of underpinning for a couple of days just to be sure. I'm pretty confident that it's all set. So the next thing is I'm going to take all of the framework away and see what it's like underneath. So here it is. I'm quite happy with that. There's only a couple of little sections where there's a bit of air, bit of space, but on the whole, really happy. And now on to the next one. So I've finished digging the third hole underneath, so I've gone in a good, I don't know, 6 to 10 inches and gone down into the clay layer. I've put this tape here because basically there's a damp course membrane in the workshop that runs underneath, so I'm just taping it up like that just to keep it from sagging down.
I also removed the second underpinning section and was really happy with how it turned out. A couple of days later, I removed the third underpinning underneath the partition wall. Removing the forms was strangely satisfying, particularly as it seemed like such a slow process. And as with most of these new skills, by around the final few sections, I really felt like I got the hang of it. I'm not, however, going to miss the digging. In this clip, you can clearly see the rebar from the previous section, ready to connect to the next section. Here was the final corner, and you can see again the rebar that had already connected up to the main ring with wire.
It is a big day on the tiny barn conversion. I finished the underpinning. It's a slow, laborious task. This was the last one I did in the corner, and it's completely set. It's completely solid, and fingers crossed, I don't have to do any more digging, which is the main thing. So if you just have a look around the underpinning under the dividing wall, and into the corner over there, and all the way back around to this corner. So no more underpinning, thank goodness.
If you've enjoyed this video, please like it and make sure you subscribe to the channel to get notified when the next video goes live. Thanks for watching.